At first, I didn't want to listen to the album. If you haven't watched my previous video about the life of a showgirl, I actually am boycotting Taylor Swift because I don't want to. I just don't want to be a part of this anymore. Just because it's not the best album does not mean it deserves this much hate. This extreme reaction shows that you've already been simmering for a while. You've already been on the fence about Taylor Swift, and she made one bad song and it triggered you. And let's be honest, I think the one bad song is the song about Travis's anatomy, because I don't think anybody wanted that. Nobody asked for that. You know what? Let's talk about it. I gave it a shot. I listened to the entire album, and while I'm a former Swiftie, I did like some of her previous work. I did not like all of her previous work. I don't hate her as a musician. I just don't agree to her message overall. I just feel like I don't support billionaires who don't use their platform to talk about important things like, the starvation of children and the systemic erasure of a whole group of people. If you cannot talk about what matters, then I don't want to hear about your sad breakup story, if you know what I mean. So anyways, what I'm going to do is, despite all the negative stuff I've read online, I'll try to be as objective as possible, and I'll give you my honest review, and I'll talk about the criticism as well. Okay, I don't think that all of it was misplaced. So let's get into it. Right off the bat, I think there are a few songs that really stood out to me, and those are The Fate of Ophelia, Opalite, Elizabeth Taylor, and Father Figure. The rest of the album as a whole is, in my opinion, a skip. The reason why I'm skipping the album, the rest of it, is not because I hate Taylor Swift and I think her music is trash. It just did not speak to me. Some of the songs I couldn't even listen to the entire thing, such as Eldest Daughter and Wishlist. And I don't think there's anything specific about the songs that I hated. They were not for me. So let's talk about The Fate of Ophelia. The Fate of Ophelia is clearly about how meeting Travis saved her from self-destruction. But as someone who's actually read Hamlet, I don't think that this is an appropriate reference. A man cannot save you from the fate of Ophelia because being at the mercy of men is the fate of Ophelia. It sounds cool to someone who's never actually read it, but to the rest of us, it sounds like you're saying Voldemort cared about love and not power, which is not the case. This is not a good look, okay? Especially with the whole Taylor Swift is not your English teacher discourse. I find it really hard to defend her on this one. With that being said, it sounds good and it has potential. There are people online saying that it sounds like Demi Lovato's Give Your Heart a Break, and I get where they're coming from, and I really liked that song as well. Do I think that this is bad? Not really. People sample songs all the time. It's only a problem if it's done without permission. It's also a problem if multiple songs on the album are very similar to other songs, because this is not just a random album. This album is produced by pop genius Max Martin. And I mean, what kind of world are we living in where Max Martin has to look to Joe Jonas for inspiration? This is valid criticism, and it's not just for Taylor, it's for Max Martin as well. The next song that really stood out to me is Opalite, and again, the same criticism. For me, I think it sounds a lot like Circles by Post Malone. And again, I don't know if she did this without his permission or if she did it with his permission. I'm not saying the song is bad. I think it was, again, executed well. And I don't have anything against the song. Okay? I don't. The third song is Elizabeth Taylor. Now, here's the thing. Elizabeth Taylor, I love Elizabeth Taylor. I love Richard Burton. I love the scandal. I love the letters, the obsession. I mean, I'm quite familiar with the story, and like, I'm down. I'm down for an Elizabeth Taylor reference. Does it make sense to compare her relationship with Travis to one of the most iconic, volatile love stories in history? Not really. I mean, the only love story more iconic than Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton is probably Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. Not to mention, both of those affairs or relationships or marriages, I mean, do you not know how they ended? Why are you comparing your happy relationship to a very tumultuous relationship? I don't understand. Travis is no Richard Burton. In fact, all of her boyfriends combined don't make a Richard Burton. You're allowed to enjoy a boyfriend or two, but this is blasphemy. I mean, I cannot imagine Travis sending her love letters that will be studied by the Vatican for years to come. I don't see him writing about his undying love for her in his diary that his second wife will someday sell in a fit of rage and jealousy for a couple of cigarettes. I don't see it. This comparison is just embarrassing. And you know what else is embarrassing? The fact that she compared her relationship to Joe to Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton as well. So I don't really think that she sees Travis as Richard Burton. I think she just wants to be Elizabeth Taylor. And that is the problem. You know why none of Taylor Swift's boyfriends are Richard Burton? Because she is not Elizabeth Taylor. That's the issue. Elizabeth Taylor wasn't the eternally single woman who could write something like The Prophecy. She's the woman that men wrote about. Taylor Swift, on the other hand, has built a brand around pining for men, whereas Elizabeth Taylor made men pine for her. There were many men, okay, but only a few lucky ones made it to her ring finger, while Taylor has literally been asking for a ring since, like, Speak Now. The problem is not that one is better than the other. The problem is the inconsistency of the brand. Both women are fascinating and flawed at the same time. But the comparison doesn't fit. Taylor Swift is... I just don't think that Taylor Swift gives Elizabeth Taylor energy. Elizabeth Taylor did not just play Cleopatra, she brought her back to life. And Taylor Swift has built this image of being a hardworking and I guess now that she's a billionaire, she's trying to portray that, but all this time she was the relatable one. Now let's talk about the sonic shift from Tortured Poets. This is something that a lot of people are talking about, and I have to say, there's nothing inherently wrong with making a fun dance pop album. People are complaining how this is not the same person who wrote Folklore, but I don't understand why they're saying that, because Folklore was not a dance album. Of course it doesn't sound the same. You could argue that the person who wrote Shake It Off is not the same person who wrote Cardigan. Does that mean that she's not allowed to switch gears and experiment? It's been a while since she's made a fun album, so it does make sense for her to make one now that she, according to her, is in a happy, stable relationship. The criticism, however, should be for the choice of showgirl imagery, because why does she have to stray so far away from herself to find a concept? Imagine she wrote an album about finding love in her mid-30s, when everyone around her is telling her that she's going to die alone, and she's already had all of these difficult breakups. Imagine a dance pop album about finding love when you're least expecting it. Wouldn't that be authentic? She didn't do that. She decided to be the showgirl, which is weird because haven't you built a brand on not being objectified and being a businesswoman and a writer first. I just feel like this concept overall is hollow, and I think that affects how people are receiving the album. I also think that it's probably not for the best that there are so many skips on this album, but I'm not sure if that is something I can generalize because there have been skips on previous albums as well. I think that Wood especially was really weak, and will probably go to the dark place that me and Only the Young went, but I don't think that we should disregard her ability to write just yet. I also saw people comparing Taylor Swift's newfound sex appeal to Sabrina Carpenter's work, and hear me out. I don't mind women in their 30s being sexy. You can do whatever you want, and I encourage you to do it, especially if it pisses off conservative men and trad wives. The problem, however, is that it doesn't feel authentic. She's using another artist's formula after saying that it made her successful. Because before Sabrina Carpenter made being sexy and cute successful, Taylor Swift was giving interviews saying that she doesn't want to be sexy. She doesn't want to be remembered for stuff like this. Remember when Miley Cyrus traumatized us with a foam finger? You're telling me that if she had executed that strategy successfully, Taylor Swift would be getting a foam finger too? Why can't you be yourself? Also, you can't have sampling accusations, copying accusations, and I guess a diss track for Charlie XCX that is not well received, all in the same album cycle. Like that's a lot of stuff. You have to pick a struggle. I really like Father Figure. I don't understand why everyone thinks that this is about Scott Borchetta and Scott Borchetta alone, because there's more to it. The song talks about a protege, and it talks about how she protects the family, and it kind of reminds me of Olivia Rodrigo because it also says you remind me of a young me. And this song feels more like Taylor admitting what she did to Olivia and what her reasoning behind it is. It also, I think that she's talking about the parallels in both of those situations. What she did to Olivia and what Scott Borchetta did to her at one time. So yeah, I think people are not looking at the deeper meaning here. I also wanted to talk about how I think The Life of a Showgirl, the song, was bland. I think most of her title tracks are. Evermore was not it. Lover was not the masterpiece she thought it was. And I also think that 1989, the title track probably existed and they had to get rid of it because it wasn't good. The Life of a Showgirl kind of follows the tradition. And I don't understand why it had to be the entire album's aesthetic. Could have worked as one reflective song about the shared experience of pop stardom. And in that case, it makes sense that Sabrina Carpenter was in it. But at the moment, it just feels very over-conceptualized and underdeveloped. I don't think that she is incapable of making a good album. I don't think all her good albums are done. I don't think so. I think that if she really wanted to tie it all together, she named the album Elizabeth Taylor or Taylor. And imagine Taylor Swift releasing an album that's called Taylor, and the title track is Elizabeth Taylor, but it's not about how Travis is Richard Burton. It's about how she wants to emulate a different kind of Taylor. Like, she doesn't want to be insecure and fighting for love. She wants to be remembered and adored like Elizabeth Taylor was. Maybe she could have written about that. Now, that would have been something. And she could have named the album The Fate of Ophelia, since that is the strongest track And if we're going to talk about Travis, might as well do it properly. Instead, we got the life of a showgirl, which is, it's too much. It's not that Taylor Swift cannot reinvent herself. I think she just doesn't know what story she's trying to tell anymore. I mean, you could argue that she's surrounded by people who don't want her to be her authentic self, but you could also argue that she has reached a level of fame where she doesn't have to pretend anymore, and this is in fact her authentic self. We'll never know. The only thing we know is that she's a billionaire and she's not using her platform responsibly. I'm not that mad at the album. I think the reason why most people are mad at her or they're mad at the album is because they're finally processing how they really feel about her silence. Okay, that's what I think this is. I think this is all pent up passive aggressive energy, and it's all rooted in the fact that she only talks about feminism when it benefits her. She can actually just lean in to being a billionaire, and she should just drop the whole baby act. You can be billionaire or you can be baby. You can't be both. This whole idea that not talking about politics is going to save your brand is stupid, because number one, it makes you look complicit, and number two, it makes you look really uneducated. And if you're going to pretend you're this, if you are the intellectual that you claim you are, you would not be doing this. At the moment, it looks like Taylor Swift isn't just publicly traded as a business, but also as a person. And that's not a good look. So yeah, I think all of the people who hate the album don't actually hate the album. They hate themselves for supporting her because she does not care. And I think they're right to do that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think we probably need more time to come up with the words to really express ourselves. That's what I think.